Welcome to the workshop. Get hired fast without settling, getting ignored, or losing hope so that you can do work that matters, earn what you and your family deserve. My name is Eric Woodard. I'm a high performance coach based out of Washington, D.C. And I know we still have a few people joining us. I'm so glad to see all of you today. And I want to make sure everybody can hear me. So if you haven't already, I would love for you all to put in the chat where you're from and how long you've been on a job search if you're on one. So I see Jane there from Chicago, right? Nice to have you there, Jane. Hi, Jane. I know you, so glad you're here. Um, and how long you've been on a job search if you're on a job search. So put that in the chat if you would. I know we saw if you're just joining us, we're putting in the chat how long we've been on a job search and where we're from. Hey there, Yaha from Ottawa. All right, we got some Canadians in the house. I see there, Justine. Yeah, I know everybody's coming from a different place. Hey there, Karen. Sure. Yeah, 8 months. I really hear you on that. Hey there. Hey there, Denver. Hi, Tasia. 10 months. Okay, so look, if you are looking for ways to get hired fast, you're in the right place. Because a lot of times being on a job hunt can feel a lot like pounding sand, right? Sometimes it can feel like waiting on a glacier. Other times it can feel a lot like wandering through the desert or going into an arena. Is that enough metaphors for you? Or looking into an abyss, right? It can be daunting. So look, who is this for? If you are unsure about the direction you want your career to go, if you're struggling to find ways to describe what you can even do, if you're uncertain if your resume is any good, if you're wrestling with how to follow up after you apply, if you're tired of applying and applying and applying and then waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and hearing nothing back, if you're doing interviews that seem to go so great and you still get the no, you're trapped in a job you don't like and you're not sure how you can escape, and especially if you're losing hope, my friends, this is a great place for you to be. On the other hand, if you're just kind of super casual about your career, you're not willing to do the work, you're reluctant to take responsibility for the results you're getting, you're just interested in finding a job to make money, you're stuck in your ways and you know a lot, and you're sort of closed-minded about trying new things, unwilling to be authentic, may not be a great place for you. Sorry. And like the stuff I'm about to offer you today has helped a lot of people, right? I've got all these amazing whiz bang testimonials, right? So here's our agenda for today, right? I'm going to offer you just a little bit about who I am. I'm going to offer you 3 strategies for possibly elevating your job search. I'm going to give you 8 tactics. And then I have an offer for you. And for some of you, that's going to be awesome. For some of you are like, I don't want that. I promise there's not like a heavy sell at the end of this. And I also want to take a stand because if you haven't been getting the results that you want, it could be the opportunity for you is to do something different. And investing in a coach is obviously something different. And I just feel present the offer. I was talking to a person today and they said, well, I want to do this, but I want to wait. I was like, what's going to be different in a couple weeks that's not true today, right? And they got real quiet, right? So just as we go through this, just something to think about again. And then we're going to ask questions, and I am so happy to take your questions. So let's get started. Who is this guy and why does he think he can help me find a job? So I grew up overseas. I grew up in Thailand, right? I came to the States when I was 18 to attend college, and I had a really hard time. This is me looking around. I was in Missouri at the time, wondering why is it so cold, right? I had a really hard time. I transferred college like 7 times. I wound up as a scuba instructor on Guam, and I spent about 10,000 hours underwater with the fish, and that was really good. And after being underwater for a couple of years, I thought, I got to really get my act together. So I thought, what would be the most prestigious, important job I could have? And I thought, well, that must be something like the White House. So I took out a piece of paper and I wrote the world's worst cover letter. I still have a copy of it. I read it today as terrible, right? And I say, "Dear Mr. President, you should hire me." And I put that in an envelope and sent it off to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And I'm like, I am never hearing back from those guys. But then about 3 weeks later, I was riding my bike past the Guam post office, and the guy came out. He's like, "Eric, you got this envelope. It's on White House stationery." So I opened it up, and it was an internship application. I didn't know what the hell an internship was. but I was really good at filling out applications because I transferred so many times. So I filled that out, sent it in, and I'm like, I'm never hearing back from those bastards. But that got me thinking, and I applied to some grad schools. I got into one. I got into GW here in DC, and I sort of landed with like this big bushy haircut, and was dumpster diving for furniture. And then I remember, I was like, I never heard back about that internship thing. And I was out running past the White House, and I was like, I'm going to call those bastards. So I found a payphone, and I put a quarter in. I said, hey, you White House bastards, what about that internship thing? And they're like, is this Eric from Guam? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm in DC now. They're like, man, we've been trying to get in touch with you. You're supposed to start in the First Lady's office on Monday. So I bought a suit and got some shoes, and I showed up. And I don't know if your politics match mine. I'm kind of old. This is back during the Clinton administration. I wound up working for the First Lady, Hillary Clinton. And she was a great boss, right? Learned a ton from her. Eventually got hired onto her staff and was with her for most of the second term, the Clinton administration. Followed her to the Senate, which I was with her for all 8 years there. And then I eventually followed her to the State Department, where I did some UNESCO stuff. And then eventually I wound up directing I left Hillary Land, and I directed all the internships and fellowships at the Smithsonian. But sort of all during that time, both as an early to sort of mid-level professional and seeing others, I saw the same movie a lot of time where people try and figure out career stuff and just have a lot of trouble. So I wound up writing a bunch of books about career stuff, especially early professionals. I've got all these fancy pieces of paper. I mean, my goodness, look at this. I have all these certifications, and now I coach, and it's amazing. And you really don't care about all those certifications or all that stuff, because what you really care about is, can I help you? And probably, I don't know. But so let's see if how I do here with what I'm about to share. So what you're going to learn how to get hired fast without settling, getting ignored, or losing hope. You are going to get 3 strategies and 8 tactics to help elevate your job search so that you can do work that matters, pays what you and your family deserve. That sound good? All right, let's get cracking. So here they are, 3 strategies. Buckle up. We're going to go fast. You may want to write some stuff down. Strategy number 1. Who can tell? And just for the sake of this webinar, right, I'm going to go super fast. So please feel free to put stuff in the chat. If you have questions, I'll do my best to catch them. And if I miss them, we'll have time afterwards, right? We'll go back through. But so I'm going to ask people to respond in the chat right now. Who can tell me what a good resume is about? Put it in the chat. Let's see. Let's see who knows. What's a good resume about? Everybody's got an opinion. Oh, Jane. All right. Everybody's got an opinion about. Okay. So M says catching interest. Okay, Dia. Something that aligns with the job description. Fair enough. Anybody, any other answers? Come on there. I know you're being shy. I know how many of you are on this. I know there's more than 2. What's a good resume about? Oh, Michael, highlighting your achievements. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. All right. So here's the thing. Yeah. Oh, okay. So there's some more answers. It's not static. It'll be tailored. I like that, Justine. And Sheik says marketing tool for my ability to help the company. So look, guys, here's the answer. Jane got it right. A good resume is not about you. A good resume is not about you. It's about them. A good resume is about them. It's about the company or organization you're applying to. It's really normal to think that a good resume is about you, because in school, right, everything is about you, right? In school, it's your report card. It's your trophy. It's your diploma. It's your cubby. School is all about you. And yet when we move to the working world, sometimes, and that's often the first job we seek. So a lot of our job seeking habits are developed when we move from school to work, right? Nobody gives us the memo, right? When we move to the working world, it's not about you. It's about the constituent, the client, the customer. It's not about you. It's about the mission, right? So if you can incorporate this into your job search, it's a game changer. The application is not about you. It's about them, right? Employers are focused on themselves, right? I mean, good employers care about their employees, but it's a means to an end. Like Google gives free lunch to Googlers. It's not because the purpose of Google is to give away free lunch. They give free lunch to Googlers so the Googlers will make better Google. So make the application about them. We talked about going from school to work. It's really natural. School's all about you, but when we move to work, it's about them. It's not about you. It's about them. All right. We're already on. Here we go. Strategy number 2. Who knows what these are? Put it in the chat. Shout it out if you know. Don't be shy, right? What are these things called? What are these things called on this shelf? Come on, who's willing to play? All right, dive in here, folks. What are these things called? There you go, Em. Thank you for playing. Thank you, Carol. There you go, Yaha, Eric, Justine. Okay, dust collectors. That's right. Books, right? And a lot of times, well, these will be in a big building, sometimes downtown. They'll put a lot of these in one building, storybooks on a shelf, right? What do we call that big buildings? There you go, Dia. Thank you, Carol, right? Library. And on the front cover of those storybooks in that library, there's some words. What do we call those words on the front cover of those storybooks in that library? What are those words? Thank you, Michael. Yeah, titles. Isn't it interesting that that word titles is the same word we use to label people in the workplace, which tells me that one's career is really just a story, right? And we can tell different stories to different audiences depending on what's going to serve those audiences, right? And I'm not talking about lying, I'm not talking about covering anything up, but I am talking about telling stories. And so if you're not using stories in your stuff, it's an opportunity. So many job seekers seek out jobs based on facts, right? I know Amazon is big on this, like we are data driven and all that. Let me ask you a question and put it in the chat. What percent of human decision making is emotional and what percent is logical? So emotion to logic, put it in the chat. What percent is emotional and what percent is logical? Okay. Who knows? So Eric says 80-20, M says 95. Good. All right. And you got 50-50, Michael. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Dia. Karen, good. So here's the thing. Jane's a smart, she's smart. Jane got it right. It's 100% emotional. Decision making is 100% emotional. Now, look, you may eventually rationalize that decision with logic, but the original decision through the limbic system is 100% emotional. So, sure, it's fine to have data in your resume and stuff, but stories are how we convey emotion. And you may have experienced this firsthand, right? If I was to ask you what your phone number was when you were 5 years old, you probably couldn't tell me. Now, if I was to, well, although I always get in trouble because there's always somebody in the chat that says, I remember. Okay, fair enough, right? But if I was to ask you how you felt on your fifth birthday, you could probably remember, right? Our capacity to remember emotions is drastically greater than our capacity to remember data. And you can use that in your job search if you're not already, right? People remember stories and feelings much more than data, right? They're going to remember how you make them feel much more than the numbers. So make your applications full of stories. Titles are just as stories. So perfect example, right? One time, notice I'm telling a story, by the way, right? One time I was receiving a bunch of applications and going through them. They're all kind of the same. And then I caught this one application where the woman who was applying had written an essay about how the summer before she'd been in a terrible car accident and her arm had been severed. I felt so bad. I was like, oh my gosh. So we wound up taking her. This was for an internship program. We wound up taking her. She came in the first day and I was like thinking about, okay, accessibility and what are we going to have to do here? She walks in the first day, 2 arms. Now, was I upset? No, I was so glad she had 2 arms. And it had a bandage from where it had been partially severed and reattached. But I was so glad I was so glad Maggie had 2 arms. And I remember that story to this day. Probably couldn't tell you much more about Maggie other than I remember that story. So stories are really, really, really powerful. Okay. Who can tell me who this is right here? Right? Put it in the chat. Who knows who this is? Who's this guy? Put it in the chat if you know. Who's this guy? Who is this? Thank you, Jane. Thank you, M. Napoleon Dynamite. Now, for those of you who haven't seen this movie, I don't want to spoil it, but here's the premise of this particular scene. Napoleon's a high school kid, and he kind of marches to his own drummer. And he finds himself on stage in front of the entire student body where he's got to do this sort of impromptu dance routine. And he hasn't practiced really. And so they put on the music that he wants, and he just does the craziest damn thing you've ever seen. I mean, he lets it all hang out. He's doing all these crazy moves. I mean, it is wild. And when he's done, there's dead silence. And then suddenly the student body erupts in applause, right? And it's such a great demonstration of how authenticity is your superpower, right? If you can be authentic, it really matters, right? Jamie Kern Lima, the founder of It Cosmetics, says everybody's a good dancer if they commit fully. Authenticity is the golden coin of the realm. Because let me tell you, the one reason they'll hire you is not because of your skills, not because of your experience. The reason they're going to hire you is that they trust you to advance the thing they care about. That's the reason people get hired. So, authenticity. So many try to be perfect. Stop doing that, right? Because let me ask you, who do humans hire, by the way? Put it in the chat. Who do humans hire? Who do humans hire? Put it in the chat if you know. I can wait a long time, right? Who do humans, people they like, M says. Who do humans, there you go, Carol, Justine. Yeah, and M, you're right. It's humans. Humans hire humans. Now, I know some of you are other mammals. There you go, Eric. Right? Some of you are spending a lot of time trying to trick ATS systems and algorithms. Yes, stop doing that. Computers don't hire humans. Humans hire humans. Humans don't hire computers, also, by the way. So the more evidence you can give them, you can show them that you're a human, the better. Humans hire humans. Be relatable. That's why they're going to hire you because of who you are, not in spite of it. So again, another story. One time I was going through a ton of resumes, or actually I'll tell you a different one, right? There was a woman named Nina who I was working with on her resume. And I said, Nina, where's the evidence on here that you're a human? And I was like, why don't you have a section talking about Nina? She's like, oh, that's just sophomoric. I don't want to put that on there. So finally get Nina to confess that she has a pen collection, right? I'm like, well, that's super weird. You got to put that on there. She really resisted. She didn't want to do it, but I talked her into it. So about a month later, I get a call from Nina. She's like, Eric, I want to thank you. I went into the interview. We talked about pens for 30 minutes and I got the offer, right? Humans hire humans. So my encouragement for you is to show them you're a human. Whatever makes you weird, that's good, because it's never the scandal. It's always the cover up. And if you can be vulnerable, that's what builds trust. That's what builds trust. And trust is the reason they're going to hire you. Okay. Authenticity is your superpower. Okay. So those are the 3 strategies. Now let's move on to the 8 tactics. Here we go. That's right, Jane. Humans, they trust. Here we go. So tactic number 1, it's hard to hit a blurry target. I can't tell you how often I talk to clients or potential clients and I'm like, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, I want to help the world. I'm like, that's beautiful. And that's super vague, right? It's super ambiguous, right? It's hard to, like, specificity is your friend. A lot of people think, oh, I want to be all open. No, right? The universe rewards specificity. It's hard to hit a blurry target. Right? How much do you want to make? Oh, I don't know, like somewhere between 50 and 300. That's really, like, you might, like, it's really vague. It's blurry, right? So get some resolution on what you want, right? Because the universe will, like, show you what you're looking for. What's the Bruce Lee quote? He says, be careful what you say to yourself because you'll find it, right? This has to do with a thing called the reticular activating system. So this is what happens when you're like, nobody's got this car, and you drive a new car off the lot and then you see it everywhere, right? We will see what we tell our mind to see. So if we don't have clarity, we're just going to see a lot of blurriness and a lot of, like, we're going to miss a lot of stuff. So specificity is your friend, right? Many people don't know salary, their goals. You got to. It's vital, right? Race car drivers, right? NASCAR drivers, when they drive 500 miles in a circle, the one thing they don't look at is the outer wall, because if they look at the outer wall, that's where the car will tend to go, right? We will find what we're looking for. So make sure we're really clear about what we're looking for. It can be a real game changer in your job search. Okay, guys, here we go. You're doing great. Who can tell me what this is? Please put it in the chat. What is this thing called? Put it in the chat if you know. What is this thing? Michael says a drill. Ken says a drill. Right? What is this thing? Cordless drill. Thank you, Eric. What is this thing called? Justine says a drill. Right? So actually, yes, you're correct. It's a drill. But when you go out and buy this, you're not buying a drill. What you're really buying is a hole, right? Nobody needs one of these sitting around, right? Nobody needs this chunk of plastic and metal sitting around their house. What they really need is the hole. So when you buy this, what you're actually buying is a hole. And actually, now that I think of it, you're actually nobody needs a hole. What you need is a place to put the hook. Actually, if you think about it, nobody even really needs a hook. What they need is a place to put a picture of their family. Actually, nobody even really needs a picture of their family. What they're looking for is the feeling they get when they look at the picture of their family that's hanging on the hook, that's in the hole that was made by the drill. So, my friends, this is an opportunity for you. What a lot of job seekers do, if they're even thinking about them at all, right? Most job seekers are thinking about me, 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 me. Let me talk about me, 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 which is bad, right? But if you even are thinking about them, the opportunity is not just to think about them as the drill, but to think about them, what keeps them up at night, right? They don't care about the drill. They don't care about the hole or the hook or even the picture. They care about the feeling they get looking at their family, right? So if you can get that sort of granularity on what they care about, it's quite literally a black swan. So the way you do that is through acknowledgement, right? You want to get really clear about what they need, right? What keeps them up at night as they stare at the ceiling? How can you give them safety? How can you make them feel seen, heard, and understood? Because again, the reason they're going to hire you is not because of your skills and your experience. And just like me, my degrees and my certificates, like nobody cares about that. What they care about is, can I trust this person to help me? If you can give that safety, you'll have offers beaten down your door, right? And that's what I help my clients do. Okay, here we go. I don't know which tactic this is. I think it's number 2 or 2 or 3. I'm not sure. So this is my resume, right? My resume is like the kitchen sink of resumes, and everybody's got an opinion about resumes. It's more art than science, right? And again, the important thing is your resume need not look like one specific way or another way. It's that it works for you. It's authentic. It tells stories and you make it about them. Okay. So your paper matters, right? So many people have resumes and cover letters and they're like, well, I want to use a template or, this is best practice, right? And it just winds up being professional camouflage, right? If your resume looks like everybody else's, you're just going to blend in. So the opportunity is to not blend in, to be different, to be exceptional, because that's why they're going to hire you, right? Realize that communication, the paper you send, it's just a communication piece. How you send it, when you send it, to whom you send it, how you send it, it's all just communication. You want to communicate with potential employers in a way they can't ignore. And some of you are like, ooh, that feels pushy. Well, it depends. What are you more concerned with? Are you more concerned with serving them? Or are you more concerned with them with not looking bad? Right? We're going to talk about this more. It's really important. The reason they're going to hire you is because you serve, not because they think you're polite. I would humbly suggest, right? So example, how many of you guys have hyperlinks in your resume? It's a real opportunity. You can add them. Okay, here we go. Tactic number 4, I think. I'm losing track. If a job application is submitted, but there is no follow-up, does it even make a sound? So my question for some of you job seekers, when you send in an application, are you like, well, golly, I sure hope I hear back from them? Or do you follow up? I'm not talking about after the interview. That's fine too. I'm talking about after you apply, right? Follow up. There's a realtor, a guy named Ryan Serhant. He just came out with a new book, but one of the ones he's well known for is Sell It Like Serhant. He was on reality TV. He was a realtor, right? And he one of the stories he tells is that he really prides himself, big time realtor in New York, really prides himself on being responsive on email, except when people apply to work for him. And so somebody applies to work with his firm, and invariably he'll get a message saying, "Oh, dear Ryan, thank you for your company interviewing me." He intentionally ignores it. If they email him again, he sends back a real sort of dismissive, kind of like "fuck off," like really dismissive, like email. And it's not until they email the third time, like it's like, "Okay, why don't you come in and let's talk?" It's a test. Some of my Jewish friends have shared with me that if I wanted to convert to Judaism, I'm not Jewish, but if I wanted to be, I could go and knock on a rabbi's door. And the tradition is the rabbi says, no, it's too hard. You can't go. I'd have to knock again. Rabbi, she'd be like, no, can't do it. And it's not until I knock the third time that she might say, okay, why don't you come in and talk? So you can use that same rule, whether it's Judaism or realtors, right? Knock 3 times, right? You're not being pushy. They're going to believe what you show them more than what you tell them. Initiative is rewarded. I mean, how many people have that silly paragraph at the top of the resume where they're like, I am a high performer, which shows initiative, and yet they apply and they don't follow up? It happens all the time. So show, don't tell, because what you show is going to be believable. All right. We talked about reelers. Okay. Now, friends, if you haven't been paying attention much, during this webinar, and for those of you who are watching the recording or listening to the recording, right, if you haven't been paying attention, please pay attention to this, because there's nothing I can share with you that's more important than what I'm about to share. Okay, here's what I invite you to do. I want you to picture a lake. And in the middle of the lake, someone's drowning. Now, all around that person are other people in little boats. Okay, so someone's in the middle drowning, and they're surrounded by other people in little boats. If that was a job search, who's the person drowning? Put it in the chat. So, person's drowning, surrounded by others in little boats, right? If that was a job search, I see there, M, right? Who's the person drowning in the lake? I hear you there, Dia. Right? Who's drowning? Take care, Jane. Right? Who's drowning? Who's drowning in the lake? You guys are getting it right. Because a lot of times job seekers will say, it's me, it's the applicant, and that would be wrong. It's the employer. And the reason we know they're drowning is they've told us, right? They put up a job description saying, help, 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 help. Like, we're drowning in work. And all the people in the boats are actually applicants. Now, despite that, what a lot of applicants do is they row on up to the point like, I'm the best, let me sell myself, I'm the best for you. Or they'll, they scare the hell out of the employer and they drown. It's very sad, right? Others will row up to the employer and say, hey, I really understand you're drowning. That must be really scary. I'm so sorry you're in that position. Let's have a conversation to see if I'm the right one to pull you out of the water and save your life. I have no idea if I'm that person. Maybe, maybe not. But what's important here is not that I save you, is that you get saved. And if it's not me, that's totally okay. I'm not here to look good. I'm here to serve, right? That's the opportunity. So if you can have that mindset in all of your stuff, it matters, right? What they think about you is none of your business. In an interview, in your application, your cover letter, and your follow-up, and your networking, what they think about you is none of your business, because what matters is there an opportunity to serve, right? They'd be lucky to get you. And by the way, if they don't want to take your hand, it's fine. There's lots of other people out there drowning. There's also lots of other people in boats, so they'll be fine, right? Come from a place of service in your job search. This is key. It's very rare that I see it, right? Often, for instance, in a cover letter, I'll count the number of I's and me's in a cover letter, and I'll say I, me. There's very little U's. Take a look at your cover letter you last sent or your email. Count the I's and me's. See if that applies to you. People don't want to have people sell themselves to them. Selling people is weird. Historically, we've gone over this, right? Slavery, human trafficking, indentured, like selling people is weird. Stop trying to sell yourself. Instead, serve them. Instead of looking at potential opportunities and say, ooh, is this something I would like? Change the question to, is this a place where I could be helpful? Game changer. Okay. Now I always get a little bit in trouble here because I know this is not a snow crab, but bear with me. This thing here is a crab, right? And how many of you guys have seen the show Deadliest Catch? You may have known the show, right? And the premise of the show, it's in Alaska, right? They're on this pitching trawler, right? A deck. It's icy. It's really dangerous, right? You fall into the ocean, you die, right? And so they have these big steel pots, they call them. There's these big steel cages, and they drop them on the floor with a little bit of bait to catch the crabs. And what happens is a little crab comes along and says, oh, there's some bait. And the crab jumps in, is eating some bait, right? And his buddy Charlie comes along and says, oh, look at Bob. Bob's got food. And so Charlie comes in, and eventually more and more crabs join, because instinctively crabs like to be with other crabs. It's safer. And so eventually the original bait is gone, but more and more crabs join because there's a crab party happening, right? So if and when any of the crabs says, you know what, I'm going to make an Irish exit, like I'm getting out of here, right? And tries to crawl out, the other crabs will pull them back in because they don't want to lose a crab. It's safer to have more crabs. They'll even pull off one of their buddies' limbs or do a crab murder. They'll kill the other crab. And of course, eventually what happens to all the crabs in the cage is they all get hauled up and get eaten for dinner, right? So this brings us to your environment, right? Most people don't even consider it, but in your job search, you want to surround yourselves not with the crabs that are like, ooh, better settle, better play it safe, stay in the cage. it's the most dangerous thing you can do, right? And your environment has a huge impact, right? You may have heard of the idea of reference groups, right? Where the average weight, income, education of the 5 people we have, and these don't even have to be living people. These can be authors. These can be people we watch on the TV news. It's who's influencing us. It really, really matters. So in your job search, if you're not surrounding yourself with ideas and people and environments that are empowering, it's something to look at. You will really want to safeguard your environment. Okay, guys, we're in the home stretch here. Offers. Let's talk about offers. Or excuse me, we're in interviews. Offers is next. Interviews. Okay. So here's one. Who would like to have the best interview advice in the world? If you'd like to hear that, put it in the chat and I'll share it with you. Oh my gosh. It's really gonna, yeah, right? And I see a hand there. Oh, so the hand went down. Somebody, it's okay. Right. So who would like to have the best interview advice in the world? Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat. Say, yes, me, Leslie, thank you. I'm just making sure you guys are still there. Thanks, Justine. Okay, here it is. During an interview, this is what you want to do. Stop answering their questions. Stop answering their questions. Because an interview, they're not really trying to get information from you. What they're trying to do in an interview is get a sense about you. And so if they don't really care what you say and they're just trying to get a feel, you might as well say things that are of service, right? That give them evidence that maybe you're somebody who could help them, right? And interviews are weird. They're these unnatural, contrived, artificial sort of things where some people are judging others. Like they're weird anyway. So the temptation can be just be to rely on sort of your one's natural emotional intelligence. It has to be a little bit more structured because it's already an artificial situation. So in an interview, if they make mouth noise, to judge your mouth noise, you might as well make mouth noise that serves. And so the opportunity is, instead of focusing on their questions, focus on the answers and stories that you're going to give to them before you go in. You're just going to use their questions as an excuse to offer the answers and stories that may be of service to them. Okay. And there's a little bit of nuance to that, which is something I work with clients on, right? You want to focus on your answers. So what that means is you never have to go in an interview and be nervous again and be like, oh, I hope I get their questions right. Now, look, if it's a very technical interview and it's sort of black and white, that's a different story. But anything less than like a purely technical interview where, they're asking behavioral questions and, tell me about a time and, what's your greatest strength and tell me about yourself. Like if they ask you, tell me about yourself, the last thing you want to do is tell them about yourselves because that's about you. You want to talk about them. Okay. Don't worry about the questions. Okay. So here we go. Offers. So here's one thing I see a lot is I'll talk to clients and they'll be, ooh, I'm Eric, you got to understand, I'm really picky about where I apply. They're proud of themselves. I'll say, why are you so picky about where you apply? Well, I don't want to apply. And then if I get the job, then I got to move my family to Connecticut and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, stop. You don't have to worry about whether you want a job or you can do a job unless and until you get an offer. And trust me, they're going to have an opinion about whether you can do the job. You don't have to worry about that. So if you do get an offer, you can always say, nah, no thanks. It's super easy. Or you can counter. So the opportunity is not to be super sort of stingy about the applications you send in. Be stingy about the offers you accept. Be super open about where you apply is the opportunity, right? And there's research on this, especially with women, where research has shown that if and again, I think this is true for both men and women, but if one can't check off 80% of the qualifications, they'll say, nah, I can't apply. I'm not good enough. Stop, right? A lot of times job descriptions have been recycled since Roman times, and somebody was just busy at 6 o'clock on a Friday and they had to get it to HR. Like, stop worrying about those job descriptions. Worry about, hey, here's what I know about this company. The thing, going back to the drill, like, are they somebody I can serve? Or I wonder if there's somebody I can serve, and you can get curious, right? Don't worry about this until you get the offer. Apply liberally from a place of service. And you never know, you might get in the middle of it and you might be like, you know what, actually, I kind of like this job. Also, too, you could apply to your dream job and be like, yeah, I don't want to work here ever. So anyway, so my friends, look, so many of you have stuck with us on this, and I really acknowledge you. And I hope some of you are hearing this as stuff that's different than you've heard before. And that's great, because my question to you would be, how's the stuff you've been hearing in the past? How's that been working for you? Yeah, I know. Okay. So look, some of you have heard this and you're like, this is really useful. I'm going to go run with this, and God bless America. And I'm so happy for you. Others of you are going to be like, you know what, this is different. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for something to break in my job search. I've been waking up every day hoping today's the day that's going to be different. My friends, this could be the day for you. And so I just want to invite you that if you'd like to talk more about how partnering with me to help you in your job search might be, I would be willing to talk to you. And I just put the link in the chat. If you're watching this on the video, it's there as there should be a link somewhere. And I would encourage you to book time with me. I know I've got a ton of time tomorrow, and then I get pretty busy. So go ahead and book it, because people on this webinar are going to be booking up the slot. So if you'd like to have a conversation, if you think you might be open to making an investment in working with a coach, let me know. Like, book time. And I just want to say one thing, and then we're going to take questions. Is the idea here, my friends? You're gonna get a job, right? You're gonna get a job. I promise you will, right? The reason to make an investment in getting help, it's sort of like getting help from a trainer, right? You can go to the gym and work out on your own, and you'll build muscles, and and it'll take a certain amount of time. Or you can get a trainer, you're gonna get bigger muscles faster, and that's why you invest in working with a coach. It's just to save time. And look, you're trying to make 120 grand in a year. That means for every month you're out of work, it's costing you 10 grand. That, if I'm doing the math right, is 2,500 a week. That means if I can get you hired a couple of days sooner and a job that pays more, you more than pay for the investment. So anyhow, that I'm going to put it's in the chat there. Encourage everybody to yeah, if you're interested, let me know, and we could have a conversation. So that being said, whoops, let's see here. I would love to take some questions from you, and I'm going to stop sharing so you can see my full gigantic head. It's very exciting. And I'm curious who, if anybody, has some questions. And so look, guys, for this, you can either raise your hand and I'll activate your voice, or you can put it in the chat. So who has questions? And I know there may be questions here from the past that I missed. I'm not seeing too many. So who has a question here? And I know a couple of the typical ones, but who's got a question, either based on what I said or based on your particular situation? One thing I sometimes get, there you go, Ken, thanks. Or I think it's Ken. Yeah. I'll come to you. There we go. We got some questions. It sometimes says, what about age, right? I'm too old. Like they're ageist and they're not going to hire me. So I really want to conceal my age. And for that, I would just say, look, my friends, it's never the scandal. It's always the cover up. And if we're going to trust, if the reason they're going to hire us is because they trust us, the last thing we would want to do is try and conceal our age by, like, those mystery dates on our education that just sort of disappear. Stop it, right? It's a tell, right? Put the dates on there. Own who you are. Again, are there going to be some people out there that ding you because of your age? I suppose maybe you don't want to work for them anyway. That's easier said than done. And like, own your greatness. So that's something that I often get asked. Okay, let's see here. Ken, suggestions for a second interview, more stories. So second interviews are great. And, I remember, and I'm sure there's some people on this call who've made it to like the second or third round, and then you get the no. If that's happened to you, I really want to acknowledge you, because that's really tough. They did a study of Olympic medal winners on the award stand and looking at their micro expressions, and the bronze medalists always super happy, right? They're like, "Wow, I got a medal." The gold medalist, "Wow, I'm best in the world." And it's that silver medalist who maybe missed, training their whole lives and missed out by a tenth of a second, that they're not super happy. And it can be the same thing in a job search. When you come in second place, it can be really tough. So just realize that you've been spared from that job. If that's happened to you, there's something brighter on the horizon. So for second interview, I think it's the same thing. And the opportunity, especially if you're interviewing with the same people, is to get curious. Show them results in advance, Ken. So especially if during the first interview you're able to get a sense about what they need, come back to them with the second interview and say, "Hey, I've been doing some thinking. I'm wondering how this is for you. I'm wondering what it would be like if, for you guys to do this." Again, you have no idea if you're the right one to help them. That's for them to decide. But what you can do, especially for that second or third interview, is come in from a place of service. So M says, "I'm not entirely sure what I want to do. Do you have any advice for figuring that out?" I do, M. I do. So there's some of you may be familiar with this. There's this Japanese idea of ikigai, right? Ikigai, ikigai. And it's sort of four circles. They form a Venn diagram, right? And the four circles are, what do I want to do? What am I good at? What can I get paid for? And what does the world need? Okay, I'll say that again. So what do I want to do? What am I good at? What can I pay for? And what the world needs. And what a lot of people do is they just focus on the what do I want to do. They might focus on the what do I want to do and what can I get paid for. They may focus on what do I want to do? What can I get paid for? And what am I good at? The opportunity is to also focus on what they need, like what the world needs, not a little bit, but a lot. And if you can get all four of those, if you can get inside all four of those circles, think of it as like a, a Venn diagram where all four circles intersect. If you can get into that space, so you're doing something that people will pay for, something that you want to do, something you're good at, and it's especially what the world needs. That's, in my mind, the most important one. That's a good way to figure out a career path. So I hear you ask the question, what do I want to do? And you have three other questions to ask. What are you good at? What can you get paid for? And what's going to help the world a lot, not a little? Hope that serves you, Em. Other questions. There we go. Somebody, thank you, Justine. There we go. How can you follow up with employers after being interviewed without being pushy? Justine, I love this question. Thank you for asking it. So here's the thing. What they think of us is none of our business. So let's go back to the metaphor of the lake. Let's say somebody was motionless at the lake and I was in one of those boats and I splashed them once and I said, hey, are you okay? And they didn't respond. Would I be like, I don't want to splash them again. That could be pushy. Even though it's possible that you could save their lives, you wouldn't, right? You would splash them until you either realized they were unconscious and you spun them over and pulled them in the boat and started giving them mouth to mouth, right? Talk about pushy. Or they looked up and they said, Justine, chill out. I'm just snorkeling, right? But you'd be willing to risk the possibility of being judged by them. Like, are you crazy? Why are you splashing me? For the trade-off of the possibility of saving their life. And the same thing is true here, Justine, right? We're not here to look good. We're here to serve them. Whether they think we're pushy does not matter. What matters is, can we help them? And I know that's a big idea and it's an opportunity. Thank you for asking that question. Thank you, Em. Okay, what was the last section on my resume? So Lisa, the most important thing about a resume is that it's one's own. So I'm not a big fan of templates or anything, but in general, to answer your question, three sections I like are experience, because that's the first thing they're going to look at on resume. Any of that stuff up top about objectives or professional profile, or here's the words I'm going to put in there to trick the ATS, like nuke them. You don't need them. And they're out of context, by the way. Like, like raised $1 million for a nonprofit, when or where. It's disembodied, right? Whereas if you fold it into your experience, then I can believe it because I know when and where it happened. So that would be a first section, experience. Next section would be your education. And again, those of you who don't have your high school on there, put it on there. Part of your story. Can't tell you how many times I've been in an interview and I said, oh, you went to that high school. I know that high school. Or maybe my cousin's uncle's brother's sister. Remember, it's never the scandal. It's always the cover up. Trust them so they can trust you and hire you. So second section would be education. Third section is something, and again, sometimes people have like publications, or maybe if somebody's technical, they have like, hey, here's my software languages, that's fine. But then a third section would be special skills, interest, and other, right? What if it was a section called More Lisa? And this is where you put evidence that you're a human. Those of you who are parents, so you could say, you know what? I know how to problem solve. I know how to be a team player. I know how to sacrifice. I know how to work hard. Or you could just say you're a mom. And anybody that's either had a mom or is a mom knows what that means. See, that's an example of showing them rather than telling them, right? Show them, right? Like there's some example, like the thing about the pens, or one time, I had a guy on there, he told me how he played the trumpet. One time I remember I literally brought somebody in for an interview because they put on the resume how on the weekends, sort of like the movie Role Models, they dressed up with like the Nerf armor and the padding and they went out and did battles. I was like, oh my God, I have to meet this person. I think we wound up hiring him, right? Authenticity is the reason they're gonna hire you. People at work are often bored. They're interested in finding new dynamic people. And if they're not, you may not want to work there. I could be wrong, just for your consideration. You're welcome, Justine. Okay. So look, guys, again, I'm going to put in the chat here, unless anybody has more questions. I so appreciate you staying with me here. Like, if you've been on this job hunt for a while, like, we can get this handled. Now, I don't know if I'm somebody that can help you, but I probably am, right? If you stuck with it on this video for as long as you have, You don't have to do this on your own. This doesn't have to be so hard. And if I were to sit here and say, oh, I can get you hired in 10 minutes, that would be a lie because I don't know. But I do know there's a good chance I get you hired faster in a position that's you're going to like that maybe won't be a repeat of where you've been, especially if you've been someplace that's sort of not nice. So that's my encouragement for you. So look, I really acknowledge you for taking the time out of your day to expand your career, right? Not everybody does that, and you do, and it's evidenced by the fact that you're here, you're watching this on a replay. So I really acknowledge you for all of it. And I just want to leave you with the idea that you're gonna get this job stuff figured out, right? Whether you work with a guy like me or not, it doesn't matter. Like you're gonna get this handled. And so for any thoughts you have around I'm bad, I've got boogers on my face, I've got mustard on my shirt, like just realize that those are thought errors. They're not real, right? It's just your fear, and you don't have to be afraid. You can get this handled. And look, if you'd like some help, like let me know. And I see if I'm somebody that can help you, right? It's a conversation we could have. So I really acknowledge you, everybody. I hope you have a great day, and keep your chin up because you're going to figure this out. Take care, my friends.